Matthew 12, Jesus goes in and clears the temple and turns over all the tables of money changers and upsets everything. And can you imagine the scene? There's loose animals running everywhere. There's shouting men. There's women trying to scamper after the animals. There's money all over the place, papers or scrolls. It's just a madhouse. Shouting. A huge crowd is gathering. People want to know, who did this? Why? Well, that's a good question. Does Jesus have something wrong with money in the temple? No. The problem is they were selling sacrifices to the people who had traveled and not been able to bring their livestock with them. But instead of going to sacrifice the animals for them, history tells us they were taking the animals around to the back and bringing the same animals back in. So it's a trick. You go to the temple to get cleansed, to get help, to get someone to intercede for God, for you on your behalf with God, and you really aren't getting anything. But it costs you money, and it costs you time, and it costs you hope. And so the people come running in and they want to know, what is this commotion? I mean, I'm kind of imagining this, but go with me here. And he what? They were doing what? All this time? Are you kidding me? Oh my gosh. How long has this been going on? How many years? What? And there's an uproar. And the temple, you're only supposed to be able to go in there if you are whole and cleansed and healed. But a few verses later it says, the blind and the lame came to him in the temple. They're not supposed to be there. There's a scene of chaos and craziness, and the people are probably upset, and the blind and the lame have come right through the barriers, and they are right in the middle of all this chaos with Jesus, and he begins to heal them. In the middle of all this chaos, it's a mess. The leaders and the priests and the teachers of the religious law saw these wonderful miracles, and they heard even the children were shouting, "Praise God, praise the Son of David." Now, whose kids were those? Well, some of those kids could have very well been theirs. And they were indignant. The leaders were indignant. They asked Jesus, and they probably couldn't get to him. Remember, he's surrounded by the blind and the lame, and tables a mess, and money and animals running all over the place. They probably had to shout over the crowd, "What? Do you hear what these children are saying? They're calling you the Messiah. You better shut them down, Jesus, or the Romans are going to come in here and take over. We are operating this temple, and we have power only because it's been given to us by the Romans. If you don't shut this down, Jesus, if you don't correct these children, Rome is going to come in here. We are pushing it as it is. Do you hear what they're saying?" And they shout over the crowd to him. And Jesus, I think he's having a great time. He's where he belongs, doing what he's called to do. The blind and the lame are in the temple, and they're getting help. People are getting help in the temple, and that hasn't happened for a while because they've been running it like, he says, a den of thieves. And it's supposed to be a house of prayer and salvation. And he shouts back over the crowd to him, "Haven't you read in the scriptures? You've taught children and infants to give you praise." Then he returned to Bethany. He just left this mess. Oh, and on the way back from Bethany the next morning, he's heading right back to the temple, and he sees a fig tree. Now, fig trees only have leaves if they have fruit, apparently. Well, this fig tree was lying. It had leaves and no fruit, and it was just like the temple, and he cursed it and said, "You don't get to trick people anymore. You're done." And that's a picture of what he just did in the temple. When Jesus shows up, there's healing, there's help, there's joy. Sometimes there's chaos, but it's always good. He sets things to right, and he brings healing, and he exposes darkness. He exposes trickery. He exposes power structures. They're taking more than they're giving, and he heals the blind and the lame. They're welcomed right into the chaos. They're welcomed past all the barriers that held them out, and Jesus calls them in and puts them in the center of it and restores.